Podesta, welcome to the Climate Pod.
Hey, it's good to be with you.
Well, it's great to have you on. So, we're obviously having you on because you co-authored a memo this week with friend of the show, Lori Lotus, citing climate change as an electoral weakness for President Trump. Why do you think this will be a particularly problematic issue for the president's reelection bid?
Well, two reasons. One, he's done a terrible job. He's essentially handed over regulation of the environment to a bunch of fossil fuel lobbyists, starting with his EPA administrator and Secretary of Interior. And he's rolled back 98 regulations that protect the environment, protect public health. But I think more importantly, right now at this time, people are concerned about climate change. All the polling indicates that. They want to see the federal government do more. They associate investment to build a clean energy economy as a strong element of what a recovery needs to look like. And Trump opposes all that. He tries to get away with talking about AOC and, sort of deflecting to that we're going to take hamburgers out of children's mouths, when the reality is climate change is a serious threat. We need to get on it. And it's reminiscent, it's harmonic, I guess I would say, with COVID-19. He doesn't listen to the experts. He doesn't listen to scientists. He doesn't listen to military experts who call it a threat. And he just, he operates from a place that's really a minority amongst the public now.
Yeah. So there's been much made over the last 4 years about people that voted for President Obama in 08 and 12, but voted for Trump in 16. How do you think these climate issues are going to resonate with them in this upcoming election?
Yeah, well, the Center for American Progress Action Fund, Climate Power 2020, and the League of Conservation Voters went out and tried to test that. And we looked at swing voters in the battleground states. These are largely Republican-leaning voters. Biden has kind of consolidated the Democrats in those places. We're talking the upper Midwest, Florida, Arizona. So these, to give you some context, they're about plus 11 Republican in that group. It's about 10% of the electorate. And they are strongly moved, their votes are moved by arguments that Biden will do something about climate change and Trump's record on climate change. Particularly in the congressional races and down ballot races, we saw massive movement for these, a lot of suburban kind of center-right leaning, Republican-leaning women in the sample. We saw tremendous movement. The sample started out -9 for Democrats. That is, Republicans were winning the congressional generic by 9 points. And after they heard arguments from both sides, it went to plus 20 for Democratic candidate, generic Democratic candidate. So I think this is a powerful issue. It's one that I know the House Democratic Caucus has embraced. Just this week, Speaker Pelosi and Congresswoman Castor from Florida released a climate action plan to deal with the climate crisis. It was a very strong document, roadmap really to what a Democratic Congress would do on the topic. And, we were encouraging all Democratic candidates to go out and campaign on this because, as I said, the climate denial that's coming from the other side, essentially turning over decision-making to the fossil fuel industry is extremely unpopular, including with Republican-leaning voters.
Right. And anecdotally, at least Ty and I spotted some areas where we felt like running on climate issues was impactful and effective in 2018. Obviously, the worry for climate concerned voters like Ty and I is that COVID-19 could in some way impact people's urgency or, how much climate issues mean to them. Are you seeing any adjustment in people's behavior during this current pandemic toward their opinions on climate?
Well, I think that, certainly climate had moved up on the list of issues, particularly amongst Democratic-leaning voters. You saw that in the primaries and play out in the primaries. And right now, people are concerned with COVID-19 and with the recovery, but they also see the parallel between COVID-19 and climate. They understand that if you ignore what is going on, they see and feel it every day. I'm sitting here in Washington. It's going to be 100 degrees tomorrow. You see it in the flooding in the Midwest, in the fires in California. They're experiencing climate change right now. They know it's a threat in the future. They know if we do the same thing we did on COVID-19, which is what Trump did, which is to ignore it, say it's going to go away. It's like, magic beans. It'll just disappear. That they're going to be in for a lot of trouble. And I think they know something else, which is that those investments in a clean energy economy, going to 100% clean, and you mentioned 2018, 35 of the members that won seats held by Republicans campaigned on a 100% clean economy platform. They know those investments are real jobs, putting real people to work, doing work that needs to be done. So I think it's an issue that Democrats should really lean into. Republicans are going to run the same old saw. It's a job killer and it's bad for the economy. The public knows that's not true. You see that not just in our polling. The recent Pew poll shows that more than 60% of voters think that it'll be beneficial to the economy to make these investments in clean energy, in more resilience in our world, particularly in cleaning up the things that are affecting what the outcomes are with respect to the pandemic. That dirty air, bad water, all those things lead to the comorbidities, as the experts are saying, that cause worse outcomes. The lifting up, I think, and you saw that in the House, and you're seeing that from Vice President Biden, the linkage between environmental justice, climate justice, and racial justice is a powerful message to the American people that we need to do better, we can do better, but we got to make the right investments going forward. And Trump is rowing in the wrong direction. It's one of the elements, I think, also that has caused the United States essentially soft power, or its standing in the world, to go down precipitously. Some of it's the handling of COVID, but before that, it was his walking away from NATO, pulling out of Paris. These are all elements of why people, in Europe and other places, look, we're lumped in with Brazil and Russia as countries that can't fly to Europe this summer. It's like, I think people are seeing that and they're reacting to it. And that's why Trump's numbers are, deteriorated so badly over the course of the spring.
Yeah, we become international cousin Eddie from Christmas Vacation, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Well, John, this week you signed on to a letter with other political and environmental activists to the Facebook Oversight Board, demanding that Facebook shut down a loophole that you argue perpetuates climate disinformation. What have you noticed recently with Facebook that has allowed climate misinformation to just go unchecked?
Well, they seem to jump to the complaints from the right, and Zuckerberg's done that for the last several years. That's why he wouldn't take down the fake video of Nancy Pelosi. That's why he has a special loophole for Trump disinformation that he's spreading. Once in a while when he gets caught at it, he'll back up a little bit. But I think what ended up happening was this so-called CO2 coalition of polluters and their allies, and the fossil fuel industry and their allies, leaned on Facebook to not fact check information that was spreading rapidly through their channels. And what Facebook decided was that they would treat that disinformation as opinion rather than a statement of fact that needed to be fact checked by. They've set up this elaborate fact checking operation that does fact check COVID-19, so they know how to do it, and they know how to slow down. They can't get rid of all of it, but they know how to slow it down. They made a conscious decision to cave into that pressure and just say, well, with respect to climate, we'll just call that opinion, so we won't fact check it. they've created this board. It's full of, people who are well known. We sent that letter to one of the co-chairs, Helle Thorning-Schmidt. She's the former Prime Minister of Denmark. She was a big climate activist. She was a great Prime Minister, and really a great climate leader. But she's now signed on to say that she will create oversight of decisions that are being made by the political offices at Facebook, and by Zuckerberg, who just doesn't want, I think, Bill Barr to come after him for antitrust violations or whatever. I mean, he's completely caved into Trump on a whole range of issues. And I think this is another one where he saw himself, well, maybe, I can appease the right by going in this direction. And so we're asking this oversight board and former Prime Minister Thorning-Schmidt in particular to step up on this and to say, no, climate change is a fact. It's not an opinion. The planet is warming is a fact. It's not an opinion. It provides a tremendous security threat and human security threat to people across the globe and in the United States. Those are facts. They're not opinions. And, hopefully they'll take some action.
Well, how much do you worry about Facebook's role in this upcoming election?
A lot. I mean, I have the brutal scars of 2016 and both the Russian interventions on Facebook and the disinformation campaigns that went on Facebook. And I think their decision to say, we'll try to get the worst of the worst out of the bloodstream, but we're going to give a complete pass to Trump, his campaign, and politicians, means that it's a kind of free fire zone out there to spread lies, to spread disinformation. I think the president wouldn't know truth if it hit him in the face, and I think that it's going to be it's bad now. It's going to get worse all the way through Election Day. I think the other thing that people should really pay attention to, and it's very worrisome, is the ways in which they use Facebook, fake accounts, fake Black Lives Matter accounts to suppress votes and to put out false information to suggest that it isn't worth voting, or that Biden is no different than Trump when Trump continues to almost every day fuel racial division in this country, and Biden is trying to heal the country. But they'll do that through, and I think largely through social media advertising, not on television, in a kind of subterranean way. It's hard, and it spreads rapidly, and it remains still a very important source of news and information, particularly for people who are in rural areas. People have less access to multiple sources of news and information. So it's very troublesome, and I think there's a lot of effort going into trying to slow down at least disinformation.
Sure.
We saw that not just in the U.S. election in 2016. We've seen it in the European elections as well. In the German election, the AfD, the far right party in Germany, was using climate disinformation as part of their voting appeal, I guess, but largely with lies and misinformation. But that is, again, Facebook is a primary channel for that kind of stuff. There are other social media channels, obviously, as well. Some are quite a bit worse, 4chan and places like that.
Right.
But Facebook is the dominant platform to spread this stuff.
Sure. Well, turning to a little bit more positive topic, the House Democrats released a very big and comprehensive plan this week to address the climate crisis. What's your initial reaction to that plan?
Look, it was took a tremendous amount of work, and I think the chair of the committee, Congresswoman Castor, did a tremendous job of both consulting with a lot of people and pulling together a action plan embraced and endorsed by the speaker that is, as I said, is a roadmap for what Democrats would do if they're in power and if they win the election in November. It is, I think, comprehensive in that it goes sector by sector and thinks about policies all the way from, the power sector, which is probably the easiest sector to decarbonize, but to transportation, to manufacturing, to land use, et cetera, that with a very aggressive set of policies and investments, a lot of attention on environmental justice and the ways in which we can improve the well-being and public health in communities that have too often been the dumping grounds for pollution in our country. So it is quite comprehensive, but I think the most important thing is that it hits the right target, which is the United States has to get on track to be net zero by 2050. That's an audacious challenge, but it's one that the country can do. We need the right policy shaping that. We need to move, we need to move to a zero carbon electricity system. We need to move transportation much more to an electric base over the course of the next decade and a half, and then into 2050. We need to have cleaner manufacturing in terms of making steel, cement, glass, aluminum, and other things. But it's all doable, and it'll create millions of jobs, create a cycle of innovation, and a virtuous cycle of strengthening our economy in a way that helps people lead better lives and in an economy where people have better opportunities, stronger wages, and the ability to participate in a project that is really critical to humanity. So I think it's a tremendous effort, and I really applaud Congresswoman Castor's leadership on it.
Yeah, it's comprehensive. It's aggressive in a way we've not seen climate policies. We're very excited to dig into that report. And you mentioned the Democrats winning back the Senate. If the Democrats win back the Senate, does this House plan require the removal of the filibuster to get some of these policies passed? I mean, what needs to happen to get these policies passed?
Well, there's a lot of thinking going on that, and I think that I think it could be very challenging to get to 60 votes on a lot of the things that Congresswoman Castor included in her report. So the question is, do you need 60 votes? A very rapid way to take that challenge on is to get rid of the filibuster. I would think that's a good idea. I think there's probably some, that may be a tall order for Democrats in the Senate who have lived with it for time immemorial. But there are other approaches that in which, particularly what's called budget reconciliation, where a lot of these policies can be put through the Senate with a 50 vote margin, with the vice president casting the tie. And I'm a veteran of the Clinton administration. When Clinton did the first budget plan in 1993, which led to this tremendous cycle of investment and economic opportunity. We had the best economy, really, notwithstanding what Donald Trump says. That was the best economy for workers, where middle class wages were going up. There was full employment, and we were investing in the right kinds of things. That passed by one vote in the Senate. The Vice President Gore cast the tie-breaking vote, and one vote in the House. So it can be done, and it set off just this, as I said, cycle of investment and investment in human capital and training and education that paid tremendous dividends for people. And I think it may be that that's what we have to do again, that we're going to have to do it with a 51 vote strategy. But hopefully, depends on how badly the Republicans get shellacked in November. But if they do get shellacked, maybe they'll come to their senses,
Mm-hmm.
listen to the experts, look at the science, come to the table, and participate in stable climate solutions that in which they will at least support the kind of investment agenda that Congresswoman Castor has proposed in terms of R&D, infrastructure, the other really critical factors that will lead to a cleaner economy. You know, you can always hold out hope. They usually, in the end of the day, they've become captive to Trump's Twitter account. But you know, maybe if he's dispatched, they'll come to their senses.
Well,
Sure.
even within the Democratic Party, there are varying opinions on how to best address climate change. There are even, disagreements on renewable energy timelines, fracking, nuclear energy, climate justice, federal jobs guarantees, to name a few.
Yeah.
Do you think that this plan, or how do you think this plan will impact these differences of opinion within the party?
Well, look, I think people will still fight for, some people will fight for more ambition, although this is an extremely ambitious plan. Some people will fight to preserve some of the status quo. But I think this has now, and this idea of 100% clean net zero economy by 2050 has gotten consensus inside the Democratic Party. And there'll be people who want to keep the existing nuclear fleet, and there'll be people who want to get rid of it. And there'll be an argument about that. You know, should we be retiring, zero carbon power at a time where we really have to accelerate the production of zero carbon power? I think in the end of the day, most people think the long-term path is through renewable sources. That's the cheapest form. But there'll be fights about that. But I think in large part, the general direction has now been embraced by the Democratic Party. There are virtually no outliers, and almost everything that Congresswoman Castor included in her report can be embraced across the Democratic caucus in the Senate and the House, and like I said, maybe by a few Republicans too. I think that the one thing that happened in the House in 2018, you might see happen in the Senate in 2020, which is the people who might be most likely to cast a vote in favor of clean energy are also the most vulnerable. So a bunch of people who were at least moderate Republicans on climate in 2018 lost their seats because they were stuck with a party that was so out of sync with the public. So maybe that'll happen. I don't know. I think the only thing we can do is keep the pressure on, keep the momentum on. I founded the Center for American Progress, and I just have to put a brief plug in. Last fall, we did our version of what does 100% clean plan look like, sort of a precursor to this Castor plan. And her two top staffers used to work at the Center for American Progress, so maybe they at least read our document. But it was, I think, everybody's now going in the same direction. We got to get to carbon neutrality by pretty quickly in the electric sector. We need to start making transportation more electric. The building sector has to go from to essentially net zero in new buildings, and we need to begin to retrofit buildings. That's a lot of work to be done, which will be good for the economy. And again, some of these sectors are a little bit harder to get into the weeds a little bit. They're harder to decarbonize. Making carbon neutral steel is a bigger challenge than making carbon neutral electricity. But we can do that, and we're going to just have to do the R&D that it takes. We have to get and hold commitments of. We're seeing that in Europe a lot now with the manufacturing sector saying we're on board. We understand where we need to go. We're going to invest in new plants, in trying to shift heat sources for even steel making, cement making to hydrogen. But it's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take some policy levers. It's going to take a lot of investment, and it's going to take a government that's on the side of the people,
Sure.
as opposed to on the side of the fossil fuel lobbyists. And I think we can get that.
Do you think this pandemic has impacted the prioritization of climate policies at all?
I think that we're in a phase now where it's like disaster recovery.
Yeah.
Just like all the attention, all the money, all the effort is just in keeping people from falling through the cracks. And so we're not really in a stimulate the economy phase. We're just trying to put a tourniquet on for all those people who've lost their work, lost their jobs, the 100,000 small businesses that have gone out of existence and aren't coming back. But I think as we turn, and we're beginning to think about that, talk about that, the House has just invested in a big infrastructure bill that's quite green. That as we turn into the fall and into 2021, then we're going to be saying, well, how do we get the economy more back on track? Where do we need to invest? Where can the federal government help stimulate the economy?
Right.
And we saw that in 2009 with the Recovery Act that President Obama did right out of the gates with $100 billion of clean energy investment. That was and still is the biggest investment in clean energy in U.S. history, and with it and probably in global history, with possible exception of what the Chinese have done on renewables. So it was a massive injection. It really helped bring the price down. So now solar and wind are cheaper than gas and coal. And I think we can do that again. And I think people's attention is turned to that. And I know we were, a bunch of us were on a call yesterday with Speaker Pelosi. And I think it is her intention to try to get done as much as she can this year. But I think she also has her eyes on 2021 if the political conditions are more favorable to make this a priority for how we rebuild the U.S. economy.
Exactly. So just to wrap up here, obviously we know, just like President Obama came in 2009 and people were excited with his plans for the recovery. People are going to want, Vice President to come in with these great plans on to address the climate crisis and to get moving as quickly as possible. You've obviously advised presidents and presidential candidates before. What does Vice President Biden need to do now to appeal to as many climate concerned voters as possible?
Well, I think he needs to, he's put out a lot of policy. It became a real point of contention in the Democratic primary debates. People had different ideas. Jay Inslee, obviously, governor of Washington, got in early on climate. So did Beto O'Rourke. But then they all came together. I think that Biden put out a lot of ideas. I think he needs to look at what Castor did. He was quite positive about that. Probably step up the game there and put out additional commitments. I ran Obama's transition, so I was part of building that that Recovery Act provision. People care about what they promise in the campaign. Trump maybe is an exception, although even Trump, he's obsessed with building the wall and the Muslim ban and everything. So people do care about what they promise, and I think look to see what Vice President Biden promises. He's already done a lot. I think he could do more. He's engaged with the climate and environmental justice community. He's doing a call just today with leaders of that community. I think he will do more, and he'll make it a central part of what he's going to argue we need to do for economic recovery. So look in the next couple of weeks as he lays out his jobs agenda. How are we going to get work coming back? What's he promising on climate? And then, hold him to it. I think I saw this with Clinton, I saw this with Obama. If they say they're going to do it, that's what's the most important element of what they're going to come into office doing. And so politics is about friction. Trump is going to campaign against Biden doing anything about climate, the Green New Deal, AOC, taking your
Windmill
burgers
cancer.
away. And Biden has to come right back at him. And then if he makes those promises, then the whole operation, the transition, the government will be supercharged with saying, we promise this to the American people, we have to deliver. So look,
we will look for that. That's our job. That's our job at the podcast. So. We've been incredibly thankful, wonderful for your time. We'll let you go here. Real quick, though, Ty and I love talking about aliens. Can we ask you one question about aliens before we go?
Sure.
Fantastic. So in 2016, you told Karen Swisher and Ezra Klein nothing that you had seen in government with your security clearance had changed your attitudes toward whether or not aliens have visited Earth. Ty and I have been impacted greatly by what we've seen that has been declassified. Has that impacted your thoughts at all?
Well, I worked a lot with Senator Reid on that question, and I was very glad that Senator Reid, with assist from Senator Inouye, got at least an office in the Pentagon that began to take this seriously and put out video that they were capturing real time. And I think if you look and see what the Navy's put out recently, then at least we're making a little bit of progress on the question of whether you're risking your career to say, let the American people know what the government knows. Yeah. When I started in on this, people really did think you were a nut. And I had senators, congressmen say to me, I'd like to get involved with this, but I know I'm just going to get, made fun of, destroyed in social media, etc. But you go for it. Keep pushing them. And I think a lot of people really are interested in this topic. And I think what has already occurred now with these somewhat more recent encounters and releases of unidentified aerial phenomena had just whetted the appetite to go back into the old files and to go forward with when we have those kind of encounters, to make sure that the public knows about them.
You just made our week. Fantastic. Thank you, John Podesta. Thank you again. Thank you so much for joining us on the Climb Pod.